Hey, it's Johnny Jet. Welcome back to my podcast YouTube channel. And today we have Park Ranger John from parkrangerjohn.com. And he's also married to Tammy Lee, who I've interviewed before. So, John, thank you for taking the time. And by the way, you guys are based in Washington State, correct?
That's correct.
And are you still a park ranger?
I've since retired. I've put in over 20 years with Washington State Parks.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
have you've been to a lot more than just Washington State parks, correct?
Yes, I spend a lot of time focusing right now going to a lot of the national parks. Been to 400 or 240 of the 423 sites.
How many are there?
There's a total of 423 sites as of right now,
Wow.
and
So is your
and then
goal
there's
to hit
always
them
state
all?
parks, local parks too. So there's always something to go see.
Yeah. So is that your goal to hit every single one?
Oh, absolutely,
And is there,
absolutely.
and do you have a favorite? I mean, I assume the one that you worked in. Which one was that? Can you say that, by the way?
Well, I worked in several of them. My first one I was a little partial to is Lake Easton. A lot of fun there. It was up on top of Snoqualmie Pass in Washington State, going over to Interstate 90. Everybody's pretty familiar with that area. Yeah.
And is there
Uh,
one that you really want to go to that you haven't been to?
oh, uh, Kodiak or
Really?
Katmai is my big one. I really want to go see. I want to go
It,
see the bears.
in Alaska.
Yeah,
And have you been to Volcanoes National Park in Hawaii?
I have.
How'd you
Yep,
like that one?
I really enjoyed it. Got to see some of the lava at night. It was pretty spectacular. Uh, I got to do the lava tube, do a little bit of everything there. It's a really fun park.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to go to that one. I don't know how many parks I've been to, but definitely not even near as many as you. But it seems like this year national parks are really taking, you know, getting front and center news. Is it true? Does it seem like they're busier than they've ever been because of the pandemic?
That's not hurting. It also kind of started a little bit when the national parks had their centennial a few years ago.
Right.
They had the big centennial push, and the promotions and everything just went exceedingly well. And there's been just a big growth going in. Um, and then with the pandemic as well, I think people are trying to reach out to the parks, go somewhere a little more local, and they don't have to fly somewhere or something like that. I
For
mean,
sure. I
you
think
look on
that's
the road and everywhere you see right now is an RV. So
is it. And have you ever driven an RV, by the way?
I have.
And
Um,
how's that?
some people like it more than others. Uh, They're good to use for vacation. I wouldn't want to live in one personally, but
Right.
of course, I've lived in the parks. I mean, I would prefer to be in the parks.
And so, what is your number one tip for people going to parks this year?
This year, the biggest thing I would say is this year you really have to plan ahead.
You do.
Uh, Several parks now are requiring ticketed entry, like Rocky Mountain, Yosemite. They're just getting busier and busier. Grand Canyon, you have to use a shuttle service. So does Zion, Bryce Canyon, and several of those places are getting filled up by 8, 9 o'clock in the morning now. They're really popular parks.
Yes.
So, and then everybody wants to go at the same time as well. You go the months of June through August, you're going to be at the busiest time, and the weekends, holidays, always the busiest parts.
Right. So,
If you don't want to go to the big ones, go to it. Go to not those times if you can.
I see. So, I mean, and there's a lot of smaller parks that people don't really know about. I didn't know about the park that you worked in.
Absolutely. And then we've got several parks. Not all parks are just for recreation for going for a hike. You've got national historic sites, national monuments. You can learn all about civil rights. You can learn about um, women's suffrage. You can work. There's all kinds of history in the United States. There's several trails. Yeah, all kinds of great information you can learn from national parks.
Right. And they have a new app this year too, correct? Where they're all in one.
Yeah, they've got a new app. I haven't used it. I used the older app, and I thought it was a little more cumbersome. So I'm not sure how the new app is working yet.
Well, I heard the new one that you can now, you can have every single park guide in their app as well. Obviously, people want to go to your website, but for the research in advance. But when you're at the park, it sounds like a good idea is to download the National Parks Service app. And
And that could be really important this year. I mean, one thing that I've noticed about going to the parks since COVID has hit is that a lot of the visitor centers are closed and it's got set limited staffing in the visitor centers. So it can be a little bit harder to get a park brochure or a map, trail map or something like that. So visitors need to be a little bit more prepared when they come now.
right. And are the opening times different for every park, I assume, or is it all like every national park opens at 8 a.m. or whatever it is?
No, each one of them can be different. In fact, some of them are closed certain days of the week. Some of your smaller historic sites and stuff like that, they may be closed like Sunday, Monday, while some of your big national parks are open 24 hours a day.
Open 24.
Yes.
So, I mean, for the people who want to go to these big parks but have not made reservations, is it still worth it for them to even try to get in? I mean, should they line up early in the morning, or can they walk in?
And this is where you need to do a little research, because some places you got to be aware. If you go to White Sands National Park, they also have the White Sands missile silo or missile range down there, and they can have the road closed off to that for certain times, and they close the park. Now going to Glacier, going to Sun Road, you have to have a ticket to go into Sun Road. So if you just show up, you may not get to do some of the key things that you want to do in those areas. And we just drove by Arches a month ago, and God, we drove by on a late afternoon. Even in late afternoon, the line was all the way out to the highway. I mean, we're talking it must have been an hour or two wait just to get into the park.
But they will get in. Will they get in?
Eventually.
I mean,
Yeah,
I assume it depends on people coming out.
Yeah, it depends on people going out. Arches has been one of the parks. I remember going 30 years ago, and I'd do a hike in Arches, and I'd be the only one on the trail. And now you go to Arches, and you go somewhere like Delicate Arch, and it looks like ants going up a hill. There's so many people wanting to go on that hike. And they've expanded the parking lot. But when do you just keep expanding? I mean, you can only expand so much before you start degrading your resources and stuff too.
And
And
do you
that's what they're
credit
really
that?
fighting with.
Sorry, and do you credit that to like Instagram, people posting these beautiful pictures of arches and?
Oh, I do think that social media has been a big impact, especially in some of the parks in the Southwest. I mean, a lot of people never knew what Upper Antelope Canyon was 30 years ago, and now you're fighting just to even get in.
And is it mostly younger people because it's social media, or is it all ages?
All ages, all ages. Uh, but you see the difference in what people used to take photos, but that's about it.
And does it seem like people are, what's the word? A little bit more stupid than the previous. I mean, you're reading about, and I just read about it a couple days ago. I mean, a woman died at Arches. It seems like all these people are like going over the barriers and trying to get the best Instagram picture or the riskiest one and doing stupid things. And
That's a real problem, actually.
Bet.
You do see people. It's not being stupid; it's being careless.
That's a good word. Thank you.
And willing to take a risk of doing something they shouldn't, and they're being worried about one photograph. I mean, one photograph is just one instant in time, but not only they're being a risk to themselves, but they're damaging resources and stuff like that, which is for future generations too.
Right. And do you know if numbers are up, like more people are dying or getting hurt because they're doing stupid things or careless things?
I know there was actual numbers of number of deaths of Instagram photos. I mean, because people are not paying attention. I know I've actually had right before I retired a response of somebody fell off a cliff, almost 200-foot cliff, trying to take a selfie. They just put their back to a solid cliff and just fell right off the back.
I assume they didn't survive.
No, not 200 feet.
And you got to go pick up these people?
Well, it depends on if you're on the incident, search and rescue or whatever. But we do have, there's multiple different agency response. It's a big endeavor to do something like that too. I mean, you have to have safety in mind and everything.
And can they get there pretty quick? I mean, rescue
Some of these
teams.
places, no. I mean, I've actually had where, doing enforcement for 20 years is, I call for backup and they'd be like, we don't have backup for you. So, I mean, you're looking at some of these areas in busy times. I mean, it can be difficult to get, even just help.
So, I mean, do helicopters come in? Will they?
There's a possibility of that too. Yeah. Especially for medical stuff. But,
Right.
I mean, when you're out in the woods, it's your responsibility for your own personal safety. Everybody should always bring the 10 essentials. I've got that on my website and I preach it. I mean, I've even had to use it myself because I've even misplaced
You
myself.
should bring 10 essentials.
The 10 essentials.
What are a couple of them so we don't give away the farm?
Well, everybody should carry a knife. Should have a compass with them, a map with them where they're going. Always very important things to have with you.
And a lot of people don't realize that I was just in Palm Desert or somewhere, and I saw a sign saying the cell phones will not work after this point. I think in a lot of these national parks, people don't realize their cell phone will not work.
No, cell phones won't work. People have GPS units and they think they've got like a free ride home with a GPS unit. You get, especially in the Southwest where you get slot canyons and stuff like that. The satellites can't reach um, up into the sky well. If they have a blocked view of the sky, they don't work at all.
Well, but is there a good app, by the way, that you do recommend for GPS, or so at least you can find your way back out? If I mean, because some parks they should work.
I think the best thing that somebody could learn is learn how to use a compass and a map. The old school way is, and maybe that's the Boy Scout in me from back in the day. I mean, if you can read a map and you can read a compass, you can get yourself out of anything.
Okay, that's good to know.
GPS they're nice, fun, they're nice toys, but nothing like the old school. You can always count on a map and a compass.
Right. And do you have any like self-driving audio or hiking tours that you use or recommend or have on your site even?
I don't have any audio tours yet. I haven't worked on that. We do have some videos of parks we've been to, but we haven't done any of that.
And do you ever use any other ones?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. And personally, I like to, when I do a lot of articles, I like to show a lot of the trail or do something like that. I don't like to give away the farm though.
Right.
I want, when somebody goes there, they still have that aha moment.
I understand.
I don't want to give everything away.
A lot of times when I'd go to a new country, I used to always buy a guidebook and read it on the plane. But then I started, just reading like how to get to, the city center or wherever I was going. And then I didn't want to read about the other except the history.
Right.
Just so I would be surprised and I would be able to make my own judgment and things like that.
Absolutely. And I want them to have that moment of self-discovery too, or, you're just going there again to do an Instagram photo or, and I'm seeing more and more people coming out with their Instagram photos now. It's like the new thing to do in a national park, I think, is to do the Instagram shot.
And do you do that? Do you use Instagram a lot?
I do some, but I've been focused mostly on my own website, Park Ranger John.
Gotcha. And how about any park safety tips? Anything else that you would recommend? I mean, obviously water.
You always carry plenty of water, especially in the desert. We're all getting into summertime. One of the things I always like to really preach for people is we're getting into the, where everybody's wanting to go camping and they want to have a campfire. Know your fire restrictions this time of year. It's always good to know. Always use a designated fire pit and try to buy the firewood where you're at. And this might sound silly to a lot of people, but one of the biggest ways that invasive species like bugs and disease gets transported is people taking firewood from their home, driving across country, and then, to save a few dollars on firewood, but they're transporting disease, bugs around.
So do they try and block that when you go through the entrance? I mean, do they ask? They should.
Well, yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes, but people are always, there's always somebody wanting to try to save $10, but
right.
But just it's one of the things where I think most people are much more understanding if they just know why,
right?
And knowing that it's such a big problem, like with transportation and insect disease, it makes sense, and people want to follow the rules.
Right. I mean, I see it all the time in not in parks, but in other ways. They just, I don't know. Some people are just are selfish or weird.
Well, a lot of times people, they, if you just give them an explanation why, they understand and then they want to follow the rules.
Yeah, that's true. They just don't know, and I'm constantly learning. I mean, every day I'm learning something. So
Absolutely.
I think that's important. Where, so can do you recommend when people go to a park? If the um, the guide center is open, can you hire a guide? Can people hire people like you to do private tours or anything like that?
You get into a lot of the big national parks now. You can find guides for many of things right now. You can find photo guides, fishing guides. That's become a pretty popular thing. Floating trips. Now, if you're looking for something like the Grand Canyon, you're not just going to go walk up and get a floating trip to Grand Canyon that weekend. There's quite the wait for that. So,
Yes.
but yeah, you go to a lot of the parks now, and there's a lot of resources now. This is one of the things I'm really trying to start to expand once I get a little further on my site is not just talking about the parks, but how the importance of how the local communities and they revolve around the parks as well. You know, a lot of them have 4-wheel drive tours. Some of them will have wildlife tours. Some of them, I mean, they're just as invested in the park as we are.
Right. And so, and when you go to parks, I mean, do you typically, find the lodging that's in the park, or do you camp, or do you get a hotel outside?
I do a little bit of everything. Now I'm a big fan of the national park lodges. I kind of geek out about this. I'll be honest with you. I love the national park lodges and the history behind them. I love the old architecture style architectures within them. When I start seeing things like the wavy glass from the old glass and the old, principles of historic preservation, we start looking into. I geek out. You can ask Tammy Lee that I get excited.
And wh-
And I start running around like a kid in a candy store. I think it's the coolest stuff in the world.
and which one is your favorite lodge?
Oh man, favorite lodge.
The one in Yosemite or the one in Grand Canyon? I can't remember their names, but
I've stayed at El Tovar in Grand
Altamar.
Canyon. That's an amazing lodge. Um, I think my favorite staying at, oh man, uh, that's a tough one.
Okay.
I really like the one up in right off of Lake McDonald in on
Which
Glacier
one?
National Park.
Which lake?
The Inn at Apgar. It's called the Inn at Apgar, and
Okay.
it's not the most decorated, not the one of the tier one lodges. I mean, I've been in Crater Lake Lodge where you are overlooking Crater Lake, and it's an amazing lodge too. But it's simple, basic, and you have this incredible view of Lake McDonald and Glacier. The
Right.
Inn at Apgar or Village Inn at Apgar, probably my favorite one in all the park system.
Cool. And do you ever go to parks in other countries, and especially Canada?
I have a little bit. I need to explore more that way, but definitely I want to see more of the international scene as well.
Have you been to Banff?
I have not,
Okay.
and
I've
I
been to
can't
Banff.
believe
It's
I'm saying that because I live in Washington State.
Yeah, I know. I'm surprised. Well, when they opened up the border, I think it's time for you guys to go.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, definitely. Um, well, did I miss anything? I think I asked all the questions I had, but
One thing I'd really mention this year too is, a lot of people are road tripping this year, and that's really how they're getting to the parks. There's still some COVID restrictions in places. And me and Tammy just got back from a big national park road trip. And probably one of the hardest things that we've seen is little things like trying to find a restroom. Believe it or not, they'd be some of the rest areas that's closed. Then we'd turn around and go to or go to a or like a restaurant or something. Usually people go by, certain restaurants and
right.
stop in, get a hamburger and a bathroom break. But a lot of them are only open for drive through now. So
Wow, that's interesting.
we found even some gas stations. It was just only gas only or something. So especially
Really?
in some remote areas, so it can be a challenge. I mean, I can tell you that it was really happy to see a few gas stations
So
along
you
our
got to
way.
bring a porta potty.
So,
You
so
might want to tow a porta potty.
yeah, almost.
Or hitchhike like an RV. Ask some RV, hey, I don't want to ride. I just want to ride your toilet.
That there's something to be said for RV this year. and and then I'd also pack a little. I always tell people to pack a little toilet paper with them. I've been to some outhouses, and they're really getting used hard right now because, especially with the places being closed. But it's the first one they've seen in 100 miles. There might not be toilet paper in there, so that can save yourself in a jam.
That's a good tip. Very good tip.
It's cheap.
I mean, I'm sure last year when the toilet paper was a huge shortage too, people were just snagging it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So
Yeah. So I always carry certain things in my car like that. Little hand sanitizer, extra thing of toilet paper, flashlight, a few
yeah.
little things like that. It definitely is a big help on a road trip.
One of my buddies carries a portable bidet,
Really?
which is interesting. So you don't need toilet paper, and you know, you know, eco-friendly and probably the way of the future.
Yeah, no kidding. That's great.
So, anyway, it's something you can put on your website.
There you go.
Well,
Perfect.
John, I appreciate you taking the time. And for more information, people can follow you at parkrangerjohn.com. And
Excellent.
what's your handle for Instagram? Or
Same thing, Park Ranger John.
okay,
Same thing for Instagram, Facebook. You bet.
well, you got a good name.
Thank you. And Facebook's probably my most active group that we stay very involved in.
Okay. Well, I know
Yeah.
Tammy Lee is a Pinterest wizard, so
Right,
I'm
right.
sure you do pretty well there too.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of stuff on Pinterest too. So
All right. Well, John, thank you very much for your time, and everyone follow him and follow my subscribe to my podcast and YouTube channel.
excellent.
All right, John, take care.
You as well.
All right.